Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Talking Like an Angler. Today we're going to be discussing attractor flies. What are they? When do you use them? And then we're going to give you a few examples.
I say let's go.
Hey, welcome to Fly Fishing Fix, where we're talking fly fishing all the time. If you like this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the little like button next to it, and drop your comments in the section below. We love hearing from our viewers. So let's get right to it though. What is an attractor fly?
Well, straight answer is that an attractor fly is any fly that attracts the attention of a fish.
Right.
Typically speaking, an attractor fly has some form of attraction on it. So it might be a bright bead head, a big feather pattern, a sparkly body, something like that. And then oftentimes the trailing bug might be a little less dull, but it doesn't have to be either.
Yeah.
Attractors really are, anything that falls into that category of an attractor fly. So if you're sitting there at a barbecue and somebody's talking about, I had a big orange stimulator up top and I was running a red copper john behind it, the stimulator is the attractor fly, even though the name of the fly is stimulator.
Right.
So, by the way, a stimulator is one of my favorite attractor flies.
Yeah, it works impressively well. Let's get to discussing specific kinds of attractor flies. I know we've kind of talked about it as a category, just sort of an overarching category at this point, but let's get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty and talk about some specific patterns so that you as a beginner fly fisherman can sort of familiarize yourself with some of the patterns that you can use as an attractor.
Yeah, and these are likely attractor patterns, even though, if something is an attractor, it's acting as an attractor, it's still an attractor, but these are the likely patterns that people tend to use, the types of flies that are considered sort of attractors, generally speaking.
Let's start with number one. That would be sort of like the big foam fly patterns, just something big that a fish sees floating by. They just can't miss.
So it's sitting up high on the water, it's large, it's got an insect profile. Sometimes it's a big Amy's ant or a Chernobyl ant or something like that. Really any kind of grasshopper pattern or big ant pattern. It doesn't even have to be that big necessarily. If you're in a small river, an attractor pattern, it doesn't have to be giant necessarily, generally sitting high up on the surface. But an Amy's ant or a grasshopper or some big foam fly is a very good attractor pattern.
Okay, so the second category that we're going to dive into is more of like the stimulators and caddis of the world. Give them a couple patterns that you might use in that category for an attractor.
Well, I've said it before, the stimulator is one of my favorite attractors, and it comes in a different body color. My favorite is orange, green, I've seen them in purple. They come in all colors of the rainbow, basically. And so the attractor in the category of stimulator, that's the name of the fly. And it typically features like a brightly colored body, like I mentioned, and a big elk hair profile. Typically fished as a dry fly, generally always fished as a dry fly, but it makes for a great attractor.
So next up, we have any fly with a flashback or any kind of flashiness on it, some flashaboo or even some like peacock herl or something that shimmers in the water can be considered an attractor fly. So
give me an example.
Okay, so for example, like a red copper john with the epoxy back, flashback on its back. We're going to talk about bead heads in a second, but it has that bright shiny bead head. Something like a rainbow warrior, or
those are great, by the way.
That's a phenomenal.
And they tend to be a little. They work really well small.
Right.
But they're also a great attractor pattern.
Right. Even something like a pink crush if you're fishing the bighorn, or
that's a good one.
Yeah. Anything with an orange bead head or bright pink colors or bright orange or anything that's flashy of any sort, can be considered an attractor.
That bright orange bead head, or that in the case of the pink crush that you mentioned, it's more of a pearlescent bead head. Beautiful fly, by the way, and a great attractor as a nymph, fished as a nymph.
Right. The fourth and final category that we're going to discuss as an attractor or as attractor flies are bead heads.
And we've alluded to them already, but beadhead flies, sometimes they're heavily weighted with like a tungsten bead, or not necessarily a heavily weighted bead, but sometimes they're white, sometimes they're bright pink, sometimes they're bright orange.
Sometimes they're glass.
Yep.
Little glass beadheads.
Glass, silver, whatever. And they just come up with all kinds of different colors for attractor patterns on a beadhead. Beadheads are typically fished as a nymph under the surface of the water.
Right.
All of the above fall into the category of attractors. And if you're fishing in certain areas where you use like a egg sucking leech or something, that can also be considered an attractor.
Even just an egg, an egg pattern can be, or a San Juan worm, something like that.
Sure.
That, you know, kind of going back to our flashy patterns. If you have a San Juan worm that's brightly colored, that can definitely be an attractor pattern, and one that just catches a lot of fish.
Yeah,
in and
on
of
itself. Yeah. And by the way, if the fish are continuously hitting your attractor, our advice is to just cut off the second bug and just go with the attractor.
Yeah, or throw on the second version. Yeah, throw on 2 attractors.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's a great idea. So anyway, hopefully that gives you an idea of what the term attractor fly actually means, and you can use it in as you develop your fly fishing lingo.
Right. Exactly. I think that's it.
Fly fishing fix out.